Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers on Fox 54, sponsored by Realtree. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your boy, as always, Jonathan Bam Rivers. Listen, the Atlanta Falcons have a 2-game lead in the NFC South. But are they a contender or a pretender to try to get to the Super Bowl? That's what I'll discuss on first down. And on second down, I'll go to social media for your questions, specifically regarding college football. My nonsense narrative this week, this may be when I get the angriest on this show. And I promise you, I'm not going to do it just because I want you to be excited that I'm excited. It's really a conversation that I'm getting sick of people hearing because it speaks to the mindset that not just sports fans have, but I think that we have as a society and as a culture, and I think we need to cut it out. And lastly, there's a conference in America that I think has been as advertised, and you should know what I'm talking about. All that and more right here on Move the Chains, but you know what time it is. Let's kick it off with first down. All right, so the Atlanta Falcons at this point are 6-4. And I've got a graphic that I'm not going to show you right this second. But I'm going to give it to you in a little bit. And the question that you see on the lower third is, are they contenders or pretenders? So there are levels to success in the NFL. The first thing you want to do is you want to be a team that has a competent GM, that has a competent quarterback, that has a competent head coach, and has competent coordinators. So I'm going deep here, so I want you to follow me. I think the Atlanta Falcons understand what they're doing. Fontenot, they've got Arthur Blank, who's been a pretty good owner, hasn't really gotten in the way like a lot of owners have in the NFL. You're looking at Raheem Morris at the head coaching spot, and now you're looking at Kirk Cousins. So you're trying to build things from the top down. I think the Falcons have done a pretty good job of doing that. They've understood that in the past few seasons, they've lacked at the quarterback spot and maybe even at the head coaching spot. They made the change, went and got a guy that has been in the organization, went and got a guy that's been seasoned in Raheem Morris, went and got a guy that's been able to win a world championship with the Rams. So when they got a guy that understands culture. So from a contender standpoint, the Atlanta Falcons are on the right side of the coin in terms of building an organization. Now let's get to the field, because I do want to show you this graphic for the 6-4 Falcons right now. I am somebody that believes that it is tough to win in the NFL. I've got a brother that played in the NFL for over 5 or 6 seasons, and he used to always talk about how hard it is to win in this league. I get it. I am never going to look down on a team for winning football games because this is not college football. It is hard to win in the NFL. But I will be a realist. I said the Falcons will win the NFC South, and I truly believe they've got a 2-game lead on the Bucs. And I want you to look at what the Falcons have been able to accomplish this season. Of their 6 wins, 4 of them are against the NFC South. And where I did misstep so far this season is thinking that the NFC South will be one of the best divisions of football or most underrated. It hasn't turned out that way because of injuries to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Also, the New Orleans Saints, who have now fired their head coach. They're in total rebuild mode. And Carolina, who looks better, is not there yet. The Philadelphia win in Week 2 is so much bigger for the Atlanta Falcons now, especially the way that game was won with Saquon Barkley dropping that pass. So why do I bring this up? It's because when you've been on the field against teams like the Steelers to start the season and like the Chiefs and like the Seahawks, who are all playoff contenders, if not leaders of their division, the Falcons haven't been able to get the job done. And the one thing that they didn't want to do is they didn't want to go from a Desmond Ridder or a Tyler Heineke to a Kirk Cousins to simply be average. Now, the Falcons' ceiling is not average. I think the Falcons have potentially one of the highest ceilings in the NFL. And I'm glad that this video was running because I want to talk about this game against the Saints. You have a division rival, and we understand division games are just different because you're more familiar with your opponent. You go on the road, and this is a Saints team that you beat earlier on in the season by 2 points at home. On a week where the Saints have fired their head coach, Dennis Allen, Derek Carr is now coming back for the first time to play in maybe almost a month. It's not that Atlanta couldn't have won this game. They were obviously in position to win the game, but it's that the Falcons couldn't finish. And it's the fact that the Falcons had to come back to even be in this football game. So now I want to ask myself, well, what are the reasons that Atlanta can't run away in this division? But see, I've told you they have a great record in the division, but the division, because it's not as strong as some other divisions, and they haven't been able to get a lot of quality wins outside the division, does that mean that they're a contender or a pretender? So I'm going to answer the question now. I think at this point in time, if you're asking me, are the Falcons one of the top 3 teams to get out of the NFC? That's what I would qualify as a contender. I would have to say no. I don't think they're a contender to come out of the NFC, and here are the biggest reasons why. One, and I did the research on this, and it kind of surprised me. Do you know that when it comes to passing offense and rushing offense, the Falcons are 24th, 25th in the NFL? See, I wouldn't have thought that. And I've told you, everybody pays so much attention to the offense because of the names and because of the perceived talent. And I don't say perceived because it's not there. I say perceived because that's what a lot of people focus on when it comes to the NFL. But I told you the Falcons' defense, I think, would be the reason that they are a contender or a pretender in the NFC this year. And while their defense has been stable, their defense has been adequate, they're not somebody who takes the ball away a lot, even though there have been some games where they've caused turnovers. If you asked me, hey, what do the Falcons defense hang their hats on? I'd say that those two safeties, like I've talked about before, and Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons, can make plays. But what if they're neutralized? The Falcons haven't really been able to get anything up front from Matthew Judon like I thought they would when they acquired him via free agency. Because, again, they did a great job in acquiring some of the talent. But if you're a team that has any aspiration of going to the Super Bowl or competing for a conference championship, and what you did was you went out and got a guy like Kirk Cousins, you want to be better. Now, this is not the end of the season. The Falcons still have plenty of time left in a 17-game season to ascend and to get better. And remember, it's what team is playing their best football by the time the playoffs roll around that generally makes a run and can get to a Super Bowl. But as of right now, if you're asking me if they're a contender or a pretender to win the conference and try to get to a Super Bowl, I'd have to say pretender. Because at this point in time, I think that the Washington Commanders, the Detroit Lions, most definitely, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Green Bay Packers are better than the Atlanta Falcons. And I think if that's where they are, even though they'll be a division champion, they're not at the point right now where I can call them a contender to try to win the NFC. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be your questions via social media. Your boy will be back with more Move the Chains right after this. Welcome back to Move the Chains. Before we get into second down and have me answer your social media questions, as always, I want to take this opportunity right here to, first of all, thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for the opportunity to host Move the Chains. Secondly, to you, the fans, man, I appreciate the love. There are so many people that are coming up to me. Listen, there was actually a tailgate going on in the city this past weekend, and do you know that there was somebody sent me a video? There was a guy with his tent up in the rain, had Move the Chains on while he was at the tailgate. Now, that's love, and I don't know the young man's name, but shout out to him and shout out to everybody else who watches and supports this show. And lastly, like I said, my production crew, you guys don't know what they go through. I'm a demanding individual, and they make sure that everything is in place. So shout out to the high standards that they have and being the best production crew in the business. All right, having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for second down. All right, so bringing back your social media questions. I don't want you to think that I've forgotten about people. I have a lot of conversations with individuals and check a lot of things online, and I just have questions that I want answered. And here they are. Let's run it. Have Kirby Smart and the UGA Bulldogs underachieved in 2024? See, the operative word here in my estimation is underachieved. I'm going to say no because the achievement that they have to win an SEC championship and to win a national championship, one to be a college football playoff contender, that's not out the door yet. Have they underperformed? Absolutely. And I was talking to Josiah about this, the producer of this show, and I told him it's not as much as Georgia losing games. Listen, they've got one of the toughest schedules in America, man. If they go on the road this weekend, if they beat Tennessee at home this week, they would have beaten the 7th-ranked team, Volunteers, and the 3rd-ranked Texas team, when Texas was number 1. And their losses are on the road at Alabama and on the road at Ole Miss. I mean, I'm not making excuses for Georgia. I'm telling you the road has been hard for them, but they have underperformed. And for everybody that keeps telling me, well, Georgia's ranked 12th in the latest college football playoff rankings and they're not even seeded as a top 12 because we know Boise State has that based on where they are as a conference leader at this point in time, I'm also going to say you can't make excuses for Georgia because they have not played like a championship team, and there have been times, first half of Alabama, you can argue against Kentucky, even though I know that that's a style make fight type game. Kentucky always plays Georgia tough in Lexington, but also against Ole Miss. Remember, against Ole Miss, Georgia came out in that first drive, held Ole Miss to a 1-yard gain, sacked Jackson Dart, then got a pick, scored a touchdown with the short field, and did nothing offensively the entire game. And I think it's spoken and it speaks to the true problem for Georgia. I think offensively, and this is something I thought I'd never say, they don't have an identity. They don't know who they want to be. They want to depend on Carson Beck, but because they can't, they don't know where to turn after that. And it's been a big problem for the Bulldogs. So have they underachieved? I can't say they have because the year isn't over yet, but have they underperformed? Most definitely. All right, what do we have in my second question? Is Colorado a college football playoff contender? If I told you, which I did, I said before the season started that Colorado would be a team that would be vying for that 12th, 11th spot in the college football playoff in my estimation. Now, the only thing I think I was wrong about in that estimation is that they may actually be a top 4 or 5 team because they could actually be a conference champion. If the Buffs went out, they're the Big 12 champs, and they represent the Big 12 in the college football playoff. So here's what I want to say to people. You look at Colorado, and I want you to look at the juxtaposition of last year and this year. They were horrible up front on both sides of the ball. And everybody knows who knows anything about football. If you want to win, you got to win in the trenches. That offensive and that defensive line have to be formidable at worst. And Deion said in the prayer conference, if you're going to get us, you better get us this year. And he meant it. And they've continued to solidify that offensive line. They've got, in my estimation, one of the best players in college football, not just in Travis Hunter, but in Shedeur Sanders. His leadership and his ability to get hit over and over again and still stand in the pocket and make plays. They've got weapons across the field. And defensively, they're not giving up as big of gaps and as big of gains as they were last year. They're more sound defensively. And I think that speaks to the level of coaches, bringing like a guy like Warren Sapp that he's brought in to be on his staff. He's an NFL guy. He understands how to win at the FCS and at the FBS level, even if it's at a program at Colorado that hasn't done it for 20-something years. Yes, they are a playoff contender, and they can wrap up the Big 12 if they continue to win ball games like they've been doing this year. All right, that's my last question. Who's been the biggest surprise in college football this year? Now, I'm going to have to say the Texas A&M Aggies. So, listen, I read a book called Everyday Millionaires, and the book talks about people in life whom you probably see walking around day to day that aren't NFL stars, aren't NBA stars, aren't singers, aren't actors, people who aren't in the spotlight. They just walk around like everyday people, and they're millionaires. And I think that's what you can get when you look at a guy like Mike Elko, the head coach of Texas A&M, who was a coordinator at A&M and then went to Coach Duke, had Duke very competitive, was doing well, and then they went and got him. So look at the difference in A&M's perspective and people's expectations of A&M. When they brought in Jimbo Fisher, A&M needs to be a national championship contender. They've got one of the best recruiting classes in the nation year after year, and that was true. And Jimbo couldn't even get to a conference championship game. But Mike Elko comes in. Nobody talks about A&M, myself included. And right now, Tennessee and Texas A&M would be in the SEC championship game if the season ended today. Tennessee, I expected, as you know, because I said they were my dark horse to not just get to the playoff but compete for a national championship. But not A&M, and all Mike Elko done is come in and build a culture. And think about this. 8 teams in the SEC had a better recruiting class than Texas A&M did this year. But they were 4th in the transfer portal. What did Mike Elko have to sell to people to come to A&M? We know they've got money. We know they've got NIL opportunities, but so do a lot of these other programs right here in the SEC. Mike Elko probably preached a culture in addition to what players can get. And now what they're getting is an opportunity to be one of the best teams in the best conference in America. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be my nonsense narrative. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. We'll be back and we'll move the chains right after this. And welcome back into the show. We just finished second down, so you know what it's time for. My favorite segment of the show. It's time for the nonsense narratives. Man, run the video. I'm sick of the conversation, man. That guy right there, I'm not even going to get into this conversation because you know I think the Chiefs are second to none when it comes to not just NFL teams, but sports teams in general. And my lower third, you're going to see the NFL is rigged. This is the crap that I hear all the time. And you know why this has been brought up again? Because in the game against the Broncos that you see here where the Chiefs won on a game-ending blocked field goal, which if you go back and watch the film, you'll see that they were attacking this one guy on the left side of the Broncos offensive line the entire game on field goals and extra points, and they got him at the end. That was coaching. But they heard Patrick Mahomes on a hot mic say that, hey, can you let him know when he's close to me? And people were saying, the commentator said, oh, well, he's trying to have the official tell him when the defensive line is close. No, he was trying to ask, let me know when my offensive lineman is close or not, because on a specific play where he got caught with the hot mic moment, his left tackle, Jawan Taylor, was in the backfield, which caused a penalty because you can't have 5 men in the backfield. So all this crap that people keep talking about, the NFL's rigged, they want the Chiefs to win, where did that come from? So let me give you a graphic, and I'm going to tell you why the NFL isn't rigged and why people who just don't understand greatness say stuff like this. Do you know why I have the records of these specific teams up right now? The Bears, the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Jets? It's because these are some of the biggest markets in the NFL. If the NFL is rigged, why do the Cowboys suck this year? Why are they trash with Jerry Jones? Everybody talks about the Cowboys, whether they win or lose, so why aren't they good and you wouldn't want them in the playoffs? New York is the biggest market in sports. Why are both New York teams a combined 5-15? If the NFL was truly rigged, these teams would be better because it's better for business because they have more people who are watching. So I don't care that the Chiefs are phenomenal. What happens is, societally, people don't understand greatness. And what they do is they look at a team or a person who is exceeding in what it is that they're doing and they're being great consistently, and they think there's no way anybody could put in the work to be that great, so it must be rigged. Stop thinking like somebody who can't accomplish things in life and understand that when work is put in, extraordinary results can happen. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be the final drive, and I'll get some time to cool down. We'll be back and we'll move the chains right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. It's time for the final segment of the show, so you know what that means. It's time for the final drive. Man, the Southeastern Conference has been as advertised. Who would have told me, and whom would I have believed if you would have told me that Vanderbilt would beat Auburn and Alabama in the same year? Arkansas beats Tennessee. See, I know people say Georgia has 2 losses and things, and they do. Texas lost at home. The Georgia got blown out. They did. The Big Ten has 4 teams in the top 5. They do right now. The SEC has 9 teams in the top 25. I talked about Texas A&M earlier as the biggest surprise to me. South Carolina could be in that conversation as well. And look what they did to A&M. If you don't understand that the landscape of this league day to day more resembles the NFL than any other conference, then you have no idea, my friend. All right, you can not only catch us right here on the Sports Leader WXCX Fox 54, but you can also catch Move the Chains on YouTube. Make sure you go to YouTube and go to @move_the_chains. Make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you like the page, subscribe to the page. Make sure that anything that you need to do gets done because this is phenomenal. All right, hey, as always, another banger for the SEC and the best production crew in the business. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. And until next time, right here on Move the Chains, as always, God bless.